is a fun picture of some rocks balanced on each other that I found on Pixabay. And I like that it already has splashes since I'm going to put them in anyway. At least this time they'll have been in the reference photo. So I drew out the rocks, and really there's no need to do that. There clearly are just a bunch of rocks. But I wanted to put in the masking some of these highlighted areas. So I will be masking the outlines and some of the areas that are just white in the rocks. This rock has a fairly large highlight. And we'll let this dry. For our balanced rocks, I'm going to put in the background. And we've got some cooler, bluer colors down on the bottoms. So I have cloudy blue and slate. Then we have some warmer tones up top. So I've got butterscotch and ginger. And I'll let each of these colors kind of come up into both areas, but I'll predominantly put the cooler ones down at the bottom and the warmer ones up through this range. I'm going to start by just dropping the ink, and then I'll probably pick it up. I'll let it dry upside down. So the ink is dried for a couple hours, and I think I would like to get some more action going on in here. So I'm going to use some alcohol in this applicator and the hair dryer and just kind of blow some of the ink around a little bit. So in our reference photo, these rocks are kind of sitting on some other rocks and there's water splashing through. And I think I'm going to leave the masking fluid on the rocks for right now and start to kind of lift out or paint in, depending on whether we're dark or light, some of these other rock shapes and try to just build this a facsimile of this kind of rockscape for our rocks to sit on. I'm going to take this light gray marker and kind of sketch where some of the rocks might be. And I may have to be adding more ink or taking some ink off. There's not a lot of ink on a lot of these places. And there's kind of a rock behind here. This is the cotton swab for lifting. I may have to add in some darker ink to at least get this forward rock. And I'll do that with the slate and cotton swab. Now that I have this ink down, I'll try lifting a little bit more. Pop in some ginger back here and also use the cotton swab. Still trying to, just want to create a slightly darker area back here. And this is the cotton swab with alcohol. At this point, I'm going to take off the masking fluid and start to paint in the rocks. This is some espresso. I'm just putting in the darkest shadow parts first. I'm gonna add some of this to the background. And maybe the extreme foreground too. This is some pebble. It's kind of on the greener side. And this is some caramel. I'm gonna pop it in. I think maybe there was some honeycomb there, but it should be relatively the similar color range. We'll kind of warm up this front rock. This is the cotton swab and alcohol. I'm going to kind of blend in the highlight side. I'm going to do a little bit more blending on some of these rocks in the background. This is again also just alcohol. And I'm going to work on the background a little bit. This is a cotton ball and some alcohol. I want to just maybe kind of tone back some of those lines in here and see. I'd like it to just kind of be a fade off into the distance kind of background. So I don't really want anything that's too drawing for the eye. Paint back in this rock. So I'm trying to decide whether I'm going to be able to get enough light without resorting to snowcap or not. So I think what I'll do is do some alcohol splattering and see if I can brighten it up a bit with that. And if not, then we'll go to the snowcap as a next resort. So this is the alcohol and the chip brush. See if I just pounce on it with the brush, if I can break up that a little bit. I think I'd like to go lighter. So this is the snowcap, and this is kind of a wider brush. That'll brighten it up a little bit while I continue to work on the rest of the rocks. Now I'll take a dark brown marker and just add some darker values. The snowcap might be a little sticky, so I might have to kind of work around it. So a key to this piece is, of course, getting the objects to stack upon each other and the appropriate reflections and shadows and lighting. So once we get a good foundation on our rocks, we'll work on that. This is a dark green. I'm going to just add another color into this. Back through with the brush and the alcohol to kind of soften and see about bringing back some of the highlights. This brush is very soft. I think I'll switch to a more stiff one. I still need to put in a few darker values to get our rocks to sit somewhere. So I'm gonna just put in some of this espresso. And this is the cotton swab and alcohol to soften. Of course, we're going into where the snow cap is, so that's always a little different. This is the black pen. I'm going to tighten up some of the rock. See if I can get some even darker values going on. This is some more snow cap. This is yet another kind of wider brush. I'd like to establish where our darks are and our lights are before really getting into the nitty-gritty of those shadings. I'm going to continue working on getting some darker values, and this is should be a very dark brownish gray marker. This is a cotton swab and some alcohol to soften, especially these parts. I'm going to take one more round with the snow cap. Sometimes we just need to add multiple layers to get the light values we're looking for. And then I'll really start to fine-tune those rocks. That's a little stronger than I thought. So let me see if I can soften this a bit. So now for these rocks. They are wet and shiny, and they have highlights on the tops, the sides, and then some reflected highlights through the this part of the rock. I guess it's also a side. And they also have some darker areas that are real close to those reflected highlights. So we want to try to incorporate as many of these different lighting scenarios and truly try to make them look like shiny rocks. Let's start by lifting. This is kind of a golden brown marker. And we'll just work on the texture of this bottom rock a little bit. Just a little bit of it in these other rocks. And again, try to soften a little bit. Continue softening up through these. the sepia pen. I'll just do a little work with that. And I'll use the white pen for a sec. This may be a little strong, so we'll see if it sinks in a little bit. The cotton swab, I'm going to use it to just run through the white ink a little bit and soften it. This might be really the same effect as, well, in this case, kind of erasing it, but as using Snow Cap, which I think I might actually do for this one. So I think I will. This is some Snow Cap on the cotton swab. And some Snow Cap on a brush. Ooh, that's a little too much there. To finish it by doing a little splattering. So this is a brush and some alcohol. And I'll do the same with, see if I get some Snow Cap on this brush. There we go, just a little Snow Cap as well. There's actually one last thing I want to do on this piece. I didn't notice it till I took a picture of it. Is that this line is actually quite pronounced in the photographs. I want it to be I just don't want it to be a focal point. So I'm going to use a cotton ball and some alcohol and just kind of break it up a little bit. Okay, I think I'll call that good. By this point, you may have noticed that the picture that I am painting does not quite look like the one that's on the cover of the video. And there's a logical reason for that. After I finished the painting, I began to wonder if my painting did not quite look like a pile of rocks, but actually looked like a pile of poop. And this is something that is reasonable to talk about in a painting class, because often, especially with ink paintings, we may be working on a reference subject and going all the way through it and not quite realizing that there might be something either in the ink flow or something about the picture that looks like something that might be distracting to the viewer, whether it's genitalia or an animal, or in this case, perhaps a pile of poop. So once you start thinking about that, and I asked my husband about it, and he's like, oh, now he can see that, and he couldn't stop seeing it, it's probably a good idea to make a small change to it to alter that impression. And that's what we're going to do right now. So I found a reference photo of some other rocks that do not have that impression. And that's because they're a different color, they have different shapes, they're at different angles. And I'm going to do just the minimal amount of surgery to my painting to create an impression that definitely says rocks. So I'm going to alter the shape of a couple of these and change the color. So the first rock I'm going to work on is this one, and I'm going to make it more elongated. And grayer. So pull out some of the brown, leave some of the shading that we did. And this is a gray marker. I'll just add in some gray. Next, I'm going to take this leave this one alone and work on this one. And I'm going to change the angle of it and make it a bit larger. Also, maybe gray it a little bit. I have to keep the balance going. This is that gray marker again. And I'll work on the shapes of these. Start actually this time from the top. And more at an angle for this one. Be an angle for this one. And a little bit broader for this one. This is that same gray marker. This is a sepia pen. And this is a slightly darker brownish marker. Just make sure we've accentuated the bottoms of the rocks a little bit. And just a little bit more softening and lightening. And this is the snow cap, so I'll do just a little bit of highlighting. I think I overdid this one. I'm gonna just do a little bit more shading. And softening. And I think I'll call it, well, here we go. And I think I'll call it good.